How was work?
Yeah, they're really cool. I mean, mainly women, mostly white.
I think you should have a good girls' night.
You two beautiful ladies want to dance.
I think we should go to the hospital.
I'm sorry, but we're not going to be able to conduct the examination.
How are you? I don't really remember much. You guys don't have rape kits?
Actually, we suggest that you go to Bryson Con.
You're on the list. We drove all the way here.
Why is this so important to you?
Come on,
No,
Nee.
seriously, why?
Don't we need to figure out what happened to you?
Hi,
Hey,
how are you doing?
yeah, I'm okay. I'm in the middle of like another couple of inches of snow in central Pennsylvania, but
Oh, you're in Central
it's like,
Pennsylvania? How far from, let's say, Lebanon or something like that?
I'm
No,
not far from there at all. I think like 45 minutes or something like that.
that isn't far. I thought that might be further east than you. It must be a little bit.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, so I'm 80 miles due south of, or not really south, it's like southwest of Philly.
Okay,
And I think Lebanon's like a little further northeast of me, but not too
okay.
much.
Yeah,
Yeah. Is
I
that where you're from?
once got a no, no. I once got a dog,
Of
but
course, as everyone does, the dog from Lancaster County.
oh, is that right? Is there a lot
Yeah,
of puppy or not
yeah.
puppy?
The Amish
Yeah,
love raising puppies and selling them to everybody on the East Coast.
a lot of breeders there. Yeah, doing, but they have the space and the time to do it the right way, not do it too, Anyway,
You
I
got
don't know how we got. Tara,
it.
Tara, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you
I
too.
wanted to start with a tiny anecdote, which might then spur at least a beginning to this conversation about test pattern in your film. And that is that many years ago when I was a college student, and I'm up in the Hudson Valley right now, and I just was right nearby and I remember there was this woman who I knew through my summer camp, and she lived nearby, and I visited her, and we got into this conversation, and she said to me, and this would have been in the early 80s, she said, if I was raped, I wouldn't tell the police. And that kind of blew my mind. I never heard that before. Grew up in a very liberal, progressive, right, where, the idea of assaulting anyone, let alone a woman, is uh, just the worst thing in the world. So to hear, and then also kind of privileged background in the sense that I just took kind of safety for granted. But the idea of like, well, anytime you're in trouble, you just go to the police, right? Or if you have some, so the idea that she would say this to me, I just like, why? Well, I couldn't connect it. So it sort of explained something to me at my very young age of 17 that or 18 that you know that she felt that she would be further victimized.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a thing. I don't know, man. Yeah, I mean that's why I made the movie, I guess. I thought it was like that's not true. I made the movie for a couple reasons. It was, you know, s- September 2017. We were as a small subsect of society, having a conversation about consent that was not fully ramped up, but we were at a point where, you know, we talked about Bill Cosby for a good year,
Yep.
and Aziz Ansari's whole incident was
Right.
out there, and we had elected a, you know,
Harasser
known,
in chief or an assaulter in chief.
we elected that person.
Mm.
Um, we were talking a lot about rape kits and the backlog. You know, we were donating money to protect Planned Parenthood. You know, so there were a lot of just conversations about women's bodily autonomy, and consent at that time. And it's something that is important to me for many reasons. And I did a lot of deep thinking about myself. And I was getting really frustrated with kind of where we were in that conversation. I think we were still living, and I think our culture has a habit of doing this. And I think we see it right now with just, you know, the ways in which we talk about white supremacy, whiteness as a whole, cancel culture and stuff like that. But I think that, you know, we have a cultural problem in America of not being able to sit with both and things are very much like either or, extreme one thing or another, black, white, which doesn't allow for much nuance and to see things, you know, play out in like a broader scale. So I think about this with consent, it's like, you know, assault is on many different levels and is a spectrum. None of it is good. None of it is good. But our legal system only really kind of recognizes and engages with the extremes. And they don't do a good job with that either. So it puts you in a really complicated position as someone who may have been violated sexually, assaulted sexually, boundaries crossed sexually, harassed. Like you don't really know if you're allowed to feel anything.
Mhm.
To I don't know, you don't know if you're allowed to pursue any kind of reconciliation, any kind of justice. Um, and you often blame yourself because there are no tools and language for you to fully understand that. So yeah, that was really frustrating to me, especially as I thought about my experiences, you know, in college and quite a few of my friends in their 20s. And I mean, all times, but particularly in their 20s when stuff like this was happening all the time and no one really, you know, had the full toolkit to deal with it. I think also what's related to that is the way in which we were taught generationally, maybe up until about 5 or 6 years ago, a conversation very much for like, you know, old millennials, Gen Xers, and late boomers is no means no. But that really doesn't account for much because just because there's a yes at one point, the yes can change. Just because, and I think we also underestimate the ways in which consent is communicated nonverbally, and how there are many other like signals and ways that folks need to be mindful. And there's also just power dynamics that coerce certain words being said that maybe we don't actually really want to say. So yeah, I was thinking in general, we need to kind of open that up and have a larger conversation. And that was something that really motivated me to write what I wrote. But, you know, also we talked a lot about rape kits in the backlog, and rape kits were something that I personally wasn't really aware of until 2017. It was never something that was offered to me or my friends. And I was curious about why. And the more I read about it, the more I realized that, you know, there are many times when that is not offered to you, or it's offered to you, or the resources aren't there for you to actually get it administered, or it's administered incorrectly, or they charge you for it, which is also something that's not allowed. So there were all of these
Really?
things.
Hmm.
Yeah. There's all these things that kind of get in the way. So you think about that, and then you think about anybody in a marginalized position, in a liberal city or town or not, you're less likely to want to go through that because you know that the system was not designed to support you or protect you. I was raised to believe that the system does not work for me, and it's not a belief; it's a reality. So when I was thinking about Renisha having a situation like that, and living in an environment like I grew up in, I grew up in
Mhm.
St. Louis, um, I would have definitely not said a word. I probably would have gone home, had a shower, took a nap, had a cup of tea, and then had to think about it for a while. And I probably would have been doing a lot of self criticism and blame.
Yeah, that was probably taught to you by some.
All of society,
Oh, okay, so I was trying to exclude family members and that kind of thing, but
No,
but
everybody has a role to play in that. We're only projecting the things that
mhm.
we've absorbed and been taught. So absolutely,
Um,
yeah.
well, your character, you brought her up, uh, Renisha, who's played by Brittany S. Hall, right? She's in a position where she doesn't even get to give or not give consent because she's
Correct.
roofied.
Well, see, that's interesting. That is something that people. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but she wasn't. She wasn't roofied. She took drugs that didn't agree with her.
I
She
thought she
also,
was also roofied, but no, she was just given strong.
yeah. I mean, and
Okay.
again, by the way, that was intentional. I didn't make that clear on purpose
Okay.
because.
I also saw it, admittedly, and I started rewatching it,
Hmm.
but then I thought I remembered everything pretty clearly.
Yeah, no. It's an easy like
A
mistake, and
little
by the way,
bit. Okay.
I knew that people would get that wrong because I think there's an assumption. I think sometimes it's easier for us to accept assault, to accept rape when we think that something more sinister is kind of at play. And I think in general, and kind
Hmm.
of what I would like to get at with that conversation is that it doesn't matter. It truly didn't matter if she were drugged or not. The fact is that she was in a position where she was more vulnerable. That shouldn't have happened for so many reasons. And there are absolutely people who go out of their way to make people more vulnerable. And I would argue that, Mike and his friend did that anyway by pushing drinks on them, by introducing other substances. It didn't really matter if there was like a nefarious, roofie or not. Like they weren't they weren't being responsible when they were doing that.
Um, you package the film interestingly too, like in this way. I don't know if it was conscious or not, but it's called Test Pattern. So it's right away. First of all, you made a narrative feature. You could have made a documentary if you just wanted to uh, deal with the subject head on, but you kind of went around it with a different type of approach, a narrative film. And it starts it's called Test Pattern, which doesn't immediately make you think of this is going to be a story about assault, but uh, and then as you're watching the opening sequence, well, let me change that, because the opening sequence actually is quite a signal of what's to come. But then it begins into then it goes into the beginning of a love story, um, which definitely gets tested, I suppose, over the course of the film. Why the title, and what did it? How did you kind of come across it? Like, what did it mean to you to call the film Test Pattern
Yeah, well, I
to
think
begin?
the definition, of a test pattern, we understand those to be are those kind of, you know, old school broadcasts on television sets that it doesn't really even exist anymore. But
Right.
the tool that a test pattern is to help you adjust your receiver to kind of see the.
Calibrate it. Yeah, you're right.
And that was kind of my idea, right? Like the film is a recalibrator.
Hmm.
Um, it's uh, it's a kind of indicator of
Uh,
where we're at. The whole goal for me with this film was to kind of hold a mirror up to the audience and ask them very clear questions of like, what do you see and how does that make you feel? And the way that the audience responds is very much in line with their own kind of political and ideological positioning. When folks screen this film in groups and there's Q&As afterwards, there's always disagreements amongst audience members about what happened, what it means, what's right and what's wrong, who's good and who's bad. And that is by design.
Yeah, Matt, I imagine. Did you get a good, did you get a few good festivals in before the quarantine or?
Yeah. So it been on the festival circuit since August
Yeah,
20.
2019.
Yeah,
That's great.
it's gone around.
So you had a lot of conversations, although one could say the bubble of the festival, attendee. But you have, depending on the festival, you might have more community, a lot of people from the community coming in, where the conversations might actually get a little bit more intense.
Yeah, I intentionally test screened the film a lot. I think
Did
we
you?
had, yeah, maybe 20 or 30 test screenings. And the point of that was not really, we weren't really looking for, if people liked the movie or not. We were interested in what they responded to. So, I would kind of sit in a dark corner and kind of make notes at like minute marks when I'd see people laugh or cringe or, ask a question. And I absolutely paid a lot of attention to what they debated at the end. And that was telling me if I was doing my job, which is kind of being as objective as I could be in some places, to kind of be at arm's length so they could kind of just see situations for what they are. Also, I'm someone who would like to, I err on the side of subtlety. So if I cannot be obvious with something, if I cannot use dialogue, I won't. And so if I felt like I could get an idea across without having to say, usually those test screens would let me know if I could get away with it or not. But yeah,
Yeah. Make people lean in and work a little harder, maybe.
Mhm.
Right. It's more gratifying. It pays off more too as a viewer of the film. I enjoyed it. It's called Test Pattern. The director, writer, Shatara Michelle Ford, who been talking with. I given the signal that we're winding down, or we're done pretty much. You have to do the show again, Shatara, at some point, because I'd like to get to know you better and have a longer conversation about film and your career. But it's opening on the 19th, and maybe those lurking in the background here it's on kinomarquee.com, which is Kino Lorber, the distributor's virtual cinema, right? But people can also find it in other virtual cinemas and other art houses. How's that working? Maybe we can get some more information about it. I just want to make sure people can find it very easily and not,
I
struggle.
think there's a list of cinemas near people. I think it's like if
Yeah.
you it's so if they go to
Go to Kino Lorber's website and look, and all the information will be there. Hold on, little information coming in. Oh, virtual cinemas. Thank you. Emma doesn't have to cross the country. Very good. So look at the Kino Lorber site, because I have a sense that they'll probably list those theaters that you can go. And when I say it's probably local art houses, more or less. And you want to support those guys, of course, as well as Shatara and her film. I should end. It's a great indie film. It stands up on many levels as also just a kind of absorbing and entertaining film as well. So you can see for that, it's got some great actors in it, including Will Brill from the OA and other places people may recognize him, and Gail Bean and Drew Fuller. And anything else I left out, or?
Brittany S. Hall.
Brittany S. Hall plays the lead character, Rashina. I think I said that wrong. Renisha. I screwed it up. So thank you, and keep warm in central Pennsylvania.
I will. Thanks.
All right, and I hope to talk to you again sometime. It was really nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you too, Adam. Take care.
You too. Take care. Thank you. All right.
you.